Big game, obviously, just to be here in the state of Alabama. A lot of people expected for an SEC 1-2 to maybe be a Kentucky. What have you seen so far by both teams in this matchup tomorrow?
Yeah, it's this is so much louder than I thought it was going to be. It's really special, actually. I think just kind of shows a shift and shows the parity of basketball and shows the dominance of SEC basketball, especially, and the investment that the SEC has put into basketball. I mean, when you think about this matchup, I grew up in Georgia, and even living in Georgia, we always watched Alabama-Auburn football. We always watched the Auburn Bowl. We always watched the Iron Bowl. We always watched that matchup on the field. And for there to be this much excitement about a 1-2 matchup on the court is special for me as a basketball fan. I love watching programs rise and grow, and you've got two incredible coaches. You've got two teams with depth. You've got two teams that play really exciting basketball. You have two teams that can score at a high level. You also have two teams that defend really hard and play really tough defense. So for me, when it comes to growing the game of basketball, these are the type of games I tell people to watch. Like if there are people that are like, I don't know, I'm not sold on basketball, I would be like, watch this game. And even once the game happens, I would say watch the replay of this game because I know it's going to be a good game.
You talked about kind of the changes in SEC basketball. Maybe how much have you seen since you've traveled nationally, the perception of the SEC and specifically Alabama and Auburn kind of changed from a basketball standpoint?
Yeah, everywhere I've gone, airports, different interviews, different segments that people have wanted me to come on, everyone is talking about SEC men's basketball. SEC women's basketball as well, obviously being someone that covers both leagues. Everyone wants to talk about the SEC and why it's so tough and why it's so dominant and why anybody can get beat on any night. But to me, I think I've gotten the most questions when it comes to Auburn and Alabama about the coaches. Everyone wants to know, what's Coach Oates like? What's Bruce Pearl like? What are those two coaches doing to keep their players, to get top transfers, and to have sustained success? So I think it's been really fun. Both coaches have been great to me and very supportive of me, and so I really appreciate them on a personal level, but also really appreciate the way that they're running their programs.
You played for Pat Summitt, so with Coach Oates and Coach Pearl, any characteristics similar to her success and what they're doing right now?
Yeah, I think I love that you asked about Pat. I love talking about her, but you know, the thing about Pat to me was she could get on you and be so hard on you or be very direct, or, you know, even when she was recruiting me and I was in high school, I remember complaining to her at one point and she was just like, well, what are you going to do about it? And I know it came from that level of being hard on me. Wasn't always easy to hear, but I know it came from a place of love, and I know it came from a place of care. And I think Coach Oates and Coach Pearl do the same thing. Like, I'll see them get after their players and challenge their players and push their players' buttons, but you also know where it's coming from. And I think from just obviously the outside looking in, and I can't speak for the players, but from what it seems like, the way their players trust them is because they know that they're also cared about. And I know that for me, that was what I always felt with Pat and being with her.
Can you recall a player that's gone from one side of a rivalry to another, like Aiden Holloway has for Alabama? And as a former player, just what do you think that's like mentally for him?
Can I recall? I really can't. Like, when you think about the biggest rivalries, which ones come to mind, right? You think about Ohio State, Michigan, you think about North Carolina, Duke, you think Auburn, Alabama. Like, those are probably the three, and I can't think of a time when someone has switched sides. I also have a hard time imagining all of the different things that Aiden's probably feeling. I know he's mentioned having still good relationships with his guys at Auburn, and you know, the success that he's had at Alabama and the way that he's playing and how crucial he is to this team. I would imagine it's a challenge, but also he's a competitor and he wants to win and he wants to compete and he wants to do well. So I think what I would imagine, just being someone that played the game, like once the ball goes up, it's just the game. It's the game, and whoever's across from him might be his guy from the school he was at, but he's still just trying to win the game and do whatever it takes to win. And I know for me, once you have a game plan in mind, the figures in front of you don't matter as much as far as who they are as a person. Like, what's their jersey number, what's the scout on that person's jersey number, and you only have to stick to that. And that's the best way that you can sort of take those emotions out of it. It's easier said than done, but I know a lot of athletes, when there's a game plan in place, that's what you're focused on, that's what you're locked in on. And so I would imagine that there's a lot of feelings before the game, probably a lot of feelings after the game, but during the game, it's scouting report, what is it going to take to win?
I'll just ask you, one of the best at breaking down the game. This is a matchup here with two teams that have been the best in college basketball all season long. What stands out to you about what we're going to see on the floor here tomorrow?
Yeah, I think both teams, when I think about offense, obviously Alabama wants to play so fast, and they're such a fast offense. They've got the fastest pace. They want to get out and run. So Auburn slowing Alabama down defensively, what is that going to look like? How do they limit Mark Sears? That's probably one of the biggest things that I'm going to have my eye on, especially after watching the Florida game where Walter Clayton Jr. sort of had his way. I think that is the key for Auburn. How do they slow Alabama down? But then also for Auburn, how do they play offense with patience? Because I know offense in the way that Auburn can get the matchups that they want. They can play fast and score in transition, of course, but they could also put Alabama in some challenging matchups if they're patient on the offensive end. So slowing Alabama down, then coming back down on the other end and being patient on the offensive end. And for Alabama, on the flip side of that, they need to play defense long enough and finish the defensive possession and then get out and run. It's going to be impossible to play with pace if you're dragging the ball out of the net every single time, right? So if Alabama can get stops on the defensive end, that's going to be their best opportunity to run and play fast on offense. So it's really, I think, for me, a matter of controlling pace and which team is going to do that the best. And it also just comes down to making plays. Like, I think about both teams, they have players that can come in and score off the bench. They have young players that can score. They've also got veteran leaders on the inside and the outside. Who's going to make plays? And who is going to, I'm interested in who's going to start fast and start. So you can start fast, but also seem rattled. So starting fast, but also starting under control. Those are just a few things that I'm looking for.
Obviously, Alabama's faced him, last year. But just what have you seen from Janai and his growth from, he was a good player last year, but now kind of a National Player of the Year candidate, leader. Just what does Alabama have to do to slow him down? Have you seen him just take a jump this year?
Yeah, Janai is so tough, right? He can score on the inside, he can score on the outside. To me, he's become a little bit more of a playmaker in the way he puts the ball on the floor and can do things and create different ways with the ball in his hands. I think being physical with him, obviously he loves to get to that right shoulder, like knowing his tendencies, being really physical with him and making him score over a high hand and not get the angles that he wants. Because when he gets the angles that he wants, he can not only score, but he can get the angle that he wants and draw the defense in and then make a pass, right? So I think with Janai, trying to limit him, send bodies to him, be physical, and just make him think. Because when he gets to just have his way, he's so good at getting angles. So I could see Alabama playing him a variety of different ways, but he's just that good of a player where you have to switch it up. Maybe you send a double from the strong side, one possession, and then next possession down, you send a double from the weak side and try to make him constantly have to think and not pick the defense apart because he's that good.
Anything else for Andraya?
You mentioned the women's SEC basketball conference, which is definitely as strong as the men's. Can you speak to what Coach Curry has done here at Alabama and just making the program relevant again?
Yeah, it's hard for me to talk about Coach Curry because they beat us a couple of times when I played. We lost here a couple of times. We actually could never win here. It was ridiculous. But, I really have a lot of respect for Coach Curry and the program that she runs and, watching her team and all of the different pieces that they have this year. I'm a Zay Green fan. She obviously started her career at Tennessee. But she has, just poured so much into this program and always talks about being a servant leader and leading with love and building that family feeling here at Alabama. And that's what resonates probably the most. Watching her also change the style of play a little bit as her team has evolved, the style has evolved. This is an Alabama team that I remember only running this matchup zone that was like an absolute nightmare. and she's been able to shift and change with the tide and with her team, literally and figuratively. But it's been fun to watch her. I know she gave us a lot of trouble and challenges, but I have a lot of respect for her and her program. They're always one that you're worried about, and they're always a team that you think can make a run in the tournament just because of the consistency that you've seen from her and from the different teams that she's had.
Great. Anything else? Okay. Thanks for that.
Thank you. See ya.